My girlfriend said, "I barely remember cheating." I replied, "Let's see what the cops say." Then I took her straight to the ER for a full talk screen, filed a police report against her friend, and subpoenaed the security footage from the bars they visited. And I just smiled, because the footage didn't just show him putting something in her drink, the talk screen confirmed exactly what it was. Original post: my girlfriend, Qley, and I have been together for almost 2 years. I'm 24, she's 22. Until this morning, I would have told you with absolute certainty that she was the love of my life. She's kind, loyal, and has a quiet strength that I've always admired. We had the kind of relationship built on trust and communication. There were never any red flags, never a moment of doubt. Don't miss the twist. Subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. This morning that all changed. I got a call from her while I was at work. She was hysterical, crying so hard I could barely understand her. She told me she had cheated on me last night. She said she could barely remember it. The words felt like a physical blow. It was so completely out of character that my first thought wasn't anger, but a profound, disorienting shock. I had a major deadline today, a project I couldn't get out of, so I told her I would come to her apartment as soon as I was finished. The rest of the day was a blur. I went through the motions, my mind a chaotic mess of pain and confusion. How could this happen? This wasn't the woman I knew. The woman I knew wouldn't do this. I finally got to her apartment this evening. The place was dark. I found her curled up on the sofa, her face puffy from crying. She looked broken. She told me the story, or what she could remember of it. She had gone on a pub crawl with a friend she met over the summer, a guy named Mark. He's in his mid-30s, more than a decade older than her. I had met him once or twice. He always seemed a bit too slick for my liking. But I trusted her. She said they were with a group at first, but by the end of the night, it was just the two of them. He told her he was seeing someone, but at one point, he tried to kiss her. She said she shot him down. They kept drinking. At the end of the night, instead of him heading south to where he was staying, she invited him to crash in her spare room. A decision she now deeply regrets. This is where her memory starts to break apart. She said it gets hazy and fragmented. She remembers them kissing on her sofa. She has a brief, horrifying flash of a memory of performing oral sex on him. She says she remembers stopping it, telling him no, and them going to separate beds. She remembers trying to call me. I checked my phone, and there was a missed call and a text from her after 2 a.m., just asking if I was awake. I had been asleep. Her next memory is waking up this morning. She was in his bed, the spare bed. She was wearing one of his T-shirts, and her underwear was gone. She has no memory of how she got there. She swears these are the only flashes of memory she has, and she can't piece them together. She said she called him after she found herself in his bed, and he denied that they had sex. She has taken full accountability for what she does remember, and she told me she understood that we had to break up. I'm struggling to process this. The betrayal is a sharp, undeniable pain, but the story doesn't add up. The extreme memory loss from just alcohol seems bizarre. It feels too out of character. A part of me, a part I'm almost afraid to listen to, is screaming that she wasn't just a cheater. I'm struggling not to think she was taken advantage of. Update 1. I listened to her whole story, the broken pieces of her memory, the gut-wrenching shame in her voice. The pain of the betrayal was there, a hot knife in my chest. But the more she talked, the more a different feeling began to take over, a cold, protective rage. The details were all wrong. The initial rejection of his kiss, the fragmented memories, waking up in a different bed with no idea how she got there. It didn't sound like a simple, drunken mistake. It sounded like an assault. The woman crying in front of me wasn't just a cheater. She was a potential victim. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The focus was no longer on my broken heart. It was on finding out what really happened to her. "Qley," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "We're going to deal with our relationship later. Right now, we have something more important to do." She looked up at me, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I cheated on you. We're done, maybe," I said. "But first, we're going to the hospital." She just stared at me. "Why?" Because I don't believe you can lose that much of your memory just from alcohol, I said, my voice hardening. We're going to get a toxicology screen. And we're going to do it right now. The drive to the ER was silent and tense. She was still crying, but now it was a confused, frightened cry. In the hospital, the clinical, impersonal environment felt strangely calming. I explained the situation to the triage nurse in a low, even voice. I said my girlfriend had experienced significant memory loss after a night of drinking, and we were concerned she may have been given something. They took her back immediately. They performed a full toxicology panel and, given the circumstances, a rape kit. It was a humiliating, invasive process, but I stayed with her, holding her hand through the whole thing. The doctor who saw us was a kind, no-nonsense woman in her 50s. She told us that the level of memory loss Qley was describing was highly suspicious and not typical of alcohol intoxication alone. The test results would take a few days. We left the hospital as the sun was coming up. We didn't go back to her apartment. We went straight to the police station. I did most of the talking. I explained the situation to the officer at the front desk. I was calm and factual. I told him about the memory loss, the older man, and the fact that we had just come from the ER where tests were performed. I was careful not to make accusations, only to state the facts as we knew them. The police were initially skeptical. She invited him back to her place, son, the older officer said with a tired sigh. But the mention of the ER visit and the toxicology screen changed their tone. They took a preliminary report and assigned a detective to the case. We walked out of the police station into the bright morning light, both of us exhausted and emotionally drained. Our relationship was in ruins, that much was true, but we were no longer on opposite sides of the battlefield. We were allies in a new, much uglier war. My personal betrayal felt small, almost insignificant, compared to the grim possibility we were now facing. The revenge I wanted was no longer on her. It was for her. Update 2. The days that followed were a strange limbo. Qley stayed at my apartment. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was a base of operations. She was too terrified to be alone in her own place. We slept in separate rooms. The silence between us filled with unspoken grief for our dead relationship and a shared, simmering anger toward Mark. The detective assigned to our case was a sharp, empathetic woman named Detective Miller. She had us write down every detail Qley could remember, no matter how small. She asked for a list of every bar they had visited on their pub crawl. 3 days after the ER visit, the call came. The toxicology report was back. I put the call on speakerphone. The doctor's voice was grim. Qley's blood had tested positive for rohypnol. Roofies. A wave of sickness washed over me. It was real. She had been drugged. The fragments of her memory. The kissing on the sofa. The flash of oral sex. They weren't drunken mistakes. They were the actions of a person who was not in control of her own body. Detective Miller's investigation kicked into high gear. With the confirmation from the tox screen, she was able to get a warrant to subpoena the security footage from the bars they had visited. It took another week to collect and review all the tapes. The call came on a Friday afternoon. "We've got him," Miller said. There was a grim satisfaction in her voice. "The footage from the last bar, the Gilded Lily, it's clear as day." He waited until she went to the restroom, and he dropped something in her drink. "We have his face, his actions." The relief was so profound it almost brought me to my knees. We had him. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was an undeniable, videotaped fact. That afternoon, 2 detectives went to Mark's office, a slick downtown marketing firm. They arrested him at his desk, in front of all of his colleagues. They walked him out in handcuffs. I had asked Miller to let me know when it was going to happen. I drove to a coffee shop across the street from his building. And I watched the whole thing. I watched the man who had violated the woman I loved, who had destroyed my relationship, be publicly disgraced. It wasn't a joyous feeling. It was a cold, quiet, and deeply satisfying justice. Update 3. Mark's arrest sent shockwaves through his world. He was fired immediately. The charges were serious felony assault. His own girlfriend, the one he had mentioned he was seeing, found out about the arrest and the reason for it. She left him on the spot. His life, in the span of a few weeks, had been completely and utterly dismantled. Qley and I existed in a strange, fragile space. The betrayal I had initially felt was gone, replaced by a complex mix of pity, anger for her, and a lingering, wounded love. We weren't a couple anymore. We couldn't be. The image of her with him, even knowing she was drugged, was a scar on my mind that I couldn't erase. But we were partners in the aftermath. She started intensive therapy to deal with the trauma of the assault. She was racked with guilt over her own poor judgment, inviting him back, drinking so much with a man she barely knew. But her therapist was helping her understand that her poor choices didn't give him the right to make his. We talked, for the first time in a long time, with a raw, painful honesty. I told her that I believed she was a victim, but that I didn't know if I could ever get past the image of what had happened. She cried and said she understood. She said she wouldn't ask me to. The legal process moved forward. Faced with the toxicology report and the irrefutable video evidence, Mark's lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to a lesser felony charge, avoiding a long trial. A few months after his arrest, Qley and I decided it was time for the next step in our own lives. She found a new apartment. The day I helped her move her things out of my place was one of the saddest days of my life. It was a quiet, somber process. We were saying goodbye not just to each other, but to the life we were supposed to have. When we were done, we stood in her new, empty living room. "Thank you, Ben," she said, her voice thick with tears. "For everything. For believing me when I couldn't even believe myself. I'll always be here for you, Qley," I said. Just not in the same way. We hugged, a long, heartbreaking embrace. It was the end. The door wasn't slammed shut in anger. It was quietly, gently closed with a profound and shared sorrow. Final update: it has been 8 months since Qley moved out. Mark was sentenced to 5 years of probation and is now a registered sex offender. His career is over. His reputation is destroyed. Justice, in its slow, grinding way, was served. Qley is doing well. She is still in therapy. She has a new job. She is rebuilding her life, piece by piece. She is strong, resilient, and I am incredibly proud of her. We talk every few weeks, just to check in. We are friends, bound by a shared trauma. There is still love there, but it's a different kind of love now, a quiet, supportive, and platonic affection. I am in therapy too. I'm working through my own trauma, the complex grief of losing my relationship in such a horrific way. It's a long process. I haven't dated anyone. I'm not ready yet. My revenge was not on Qley. It was for her. But the collateral damage was our relationship. The night she was assaulted, our future was assaulted too. It was a casualty of his crime. There was no going back to the innocent trust we once had. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just believed she was a cheater. If I had just walked away in anger that first night. She would have been left alone to process a trauma she didn't even understand, blaming herself for a crime that was committed against her. My choice to look past my own pain and see hers changed the course of both our lives. I lost a girlfriend, but I helped save a person. I don't know if that's a happy ending, but it's a true one, and for now, that has to be enough.